Hey everyone, my name is Brad, log on to Name Investing Doc. Today I'd like to talk a little bit about best business practices for setting up your business checking accounts because we just got hit with fraud on ours. So you can avoid all the headaches that we had to deal with by following these following steps. So a couple of days ago, I got a call out of nowhere, and the call was from an Arizona number, and they immediately said, hey, this is so-and-so with Wells Fargo, which is my current business account bank. And they said, hey, did you pay someone almost $9,000 that's written out to a name of an individual that's trying to cash a check 4 hours away from a city where you're at? Because it doesn't look typical, and our fraud alert got internally pinged. Definitely this raised a few eyebrows in their office and in mine. So immediately pulled out my checkbook and I said, look, no, we didn't write that check, and I've never even heard of this guy before. So within a matter of a minute or so, they said, no worries. I'm glad you confirmed that it's fraud. We're going to hold that account, and we're not going to allow any checks to go through, and we're going to pause any payments on that check. So I get home because I'm driving during this initial phone call, and I immediately log into my Wells Fargo account, and they told me to call the number on the back of the Wells Fargo card and call them back. So I think there's one key factor that I'd like to address right off the bat, is that when this group called me, they didn't ask for any personal information from me. They just said, hi, am I talking with Brad? I said, sure. Yeah, you got him. And they immediately jumped right into it. They didn't say, hey, is this your business account number? Can you confirm your last four of your social? Can you do anything like that? It was just, hey, is this Brad? Someone filed a check. Can you confirm that you paid $9,000 to this individual? Yes or no? So when I got home, I immediately opened up my bank account, and there is the $8,955 check and 0 cents made out to another individual's name that I've never heard of before, that I can see is trying to be cashed on my Wells Fargo account in my business account. And then I also see a reversal charge as well, that Wells Fargo already hit the reversal charge. So I called the number on the back of my card, and it turns out that Wells Fargo has a specific medical business account group based out of Arizona, where that's all that they do is medical accounts, medical businesses. And it was nice to deal with someone who just deals with that. I spent about 30 minutes on the phone with those individuals, and they just basically told me, we'll be in touch later. We're going to pause everything on your account, and let's go through the couple of options that they gave me once that happened. The first option they gave me, which was not really an option, was literally close the account. They would forward all payments to that bank account number that were basically ACH payments, insurance payments that went directly into my account. For 90 days, they would forward it into a new account that they would copy and paste create for me with a whole different bank account number. That's not really an option for me because it can take 3 months, 6 months to change some of these payments. And honestly, there's some smaller payments that we may not even remember that we're getting payments from them because we only have 1 or 2 patients that are on that specific insurance plan. So I may never get that payment, and it may go into someone's business account that I have no idea. So that's going to be a huge headache trying to switch all that over, which I really didn't want to do. The next option is what's called positive pay. So basically, you continue the account. There's a fraud alert that's placed on it, and you add on an additional service called positive pay. What positive pay is that a couple of things have to match up with any outgoing payment. So I have to literally go into this business account and say, yep, I paid Tom Jones $4,223.32 with check number 3001 on this date. So the name of the individual needs to match up, the check number, and the amount type. And that's why they call it positive pay. They do those 3 checks and balances to make sure that it all lines up before that outgoing payment is sent. So they told me I could enroll in positive pay. It's about $75 a month, and that this would essentially never happen again, and I wouldn't have to close my account. That I could still get debits, but any outgoing transfer would not be possible without me going in and actually confirming it. The final option is to just reopen the account and just act like nothing happened. Now, the caveat with that was that is if Wells Fargo told me if I get another fraudulent charge on there, that they're not going to cover that fraudulent charge, that the first one's kind of on the house. And if I waive my rights to any of this positive pay or other kind of secondary steps, that they're going to make me accountable for whatever check is written. So I ended up signing up for the positive pay. And at the same time, I created a new bank account for outgoing payments so that I can basically separate the two in the future. For those of you who follow along on the blog, you may know that I really do look up to my older brother who started a business and then kind of retired, I want to say at 28 years old, maybe 30 years old, after he started his own oil and gas company. So I called him to ask for a little bit of advice on what should I do in this situation. And he was a little bit floored that I didn't have two business accounts set up from the very beginning. He told me that it was basically industry standard. I'm a physician. I don't know these industry standards, and my accountant never told me about this. And I'm not blaming my accountant. I just had no idea. So it turns out that most large groups will have obviously multiple business accounts, and you have one business account that's for payments that are incoming, and then you use a totally different business account that is for outgoing payments. And the reason for that is if there's any fraud that happens on that outgoing payments or any issues with it, you can easily split it up to say incoming payments come into this bank account, outgoing payments go out of that bank account, and you just transfer money between the two whenever necessary. So for example, for his payroll, for one of his companies, he has a checking account that's literally just for payroll, and he submits everything through there. He can upload like a Excel file that basically proves exactly how much each one is getting paid. And in the Wells Fargo account, they can easily just match it up and do positive pay that way. So you don't have to just type it in for every individual employee. So like if you used QuickBooks, for example, which he did not use, but on QuickBooks, you can download a CSV file, an Excel-based file basically, and you can upload that into like Wells Fargo's backend software and prove that that paycheck and everything with positive pay will line up. That paycheck, that date, that check number, that name, and that amount all line up. So the real big question is, how did this happen? And although I can't prove it because we don't have cameras inside of our bedrooms in the house, the only thing that I can think of is my son turned 1 recently, and we hired a cleaning crew to come through about 3 weeks prior to this to clean our house. So I have 2 different checkbooks. I have one that I keep at the office in a lockbox, and then I have another one that is at home, but it's not in a lockbox. It's in a drawer that is hidden away in the bedroom that honestly, if you weren't opening it up and looking in there, you'd have no idea that it's even in there. I thought that hiding that checkbook away like that would be enough, but clearly that wasn't the case. In this drawer, there's also some petty cash, usually about $200. I immediately go to this drawer and I find that the check number that was written was the very first check that was in that checkbook. And I think we had about $140 in there. All that petty cash completely gone. So I call the cleaning company. They adamantly deny everything. I call the cops and they tell me because it's not my money anymore. Wells Fargo took the loss on that money, that it's actually Wells Fargo that needs to file the police complaint. They still did take my complaint. I got a police report number that I forwarded to Wells Fargo. But apparently this is completely up to Wells Fargo because it's their money that they lost on how to proceed forward. So it was an expensive lesson learned because honestly, I didn't think about at home. I was so busy going through my kid's first birthday. I wasn't worried about, is someone going to snoop through every single drawer of mine to find a checkbook that's hidden way in the back. Another thing that happened right around this time, though, is that I actually noticed that I was getting some weird faxes from pharmacies. And in that same drawer is a prescription pad that has my DEA number at the top of the prescription pad, like many prescription pads do. Someone was not only trying to steal that check and that bank account information, but then they were calling in codeine cough syrup into various other small cities all over the state that honestly I've never even heard of for many of these. And they were trying to basically get them to go through. Luckily, on the prescription monitoring program, you can look that up and see where there were these scripts filled, and there were only a handful that were filled, and we immediately called and got those blocked from future fills, had to file another police report. In all, I signed up for LifeLock, I signed up for credit monitoring services, and I spent dozens of hours dealing with this fraud. And it really pains me to think that all of this could have been prevented if I just would have followed the best practices by having only a deposit-only account and an outgoing transfer account for payments. And it's an expensive lesson learned. So keep that in mind. If you're owning a business, create 2 business accounts from the beginning. I definitely can't get any of my time back. Luckily, I'm not out any money. I'm just out the 10 plus hours that I spent trying to track down and file these police reports, make sure that no one fills any illicit scripts, and make sure that nothing else necessarily happens that's bad. Now, we definitely have been more vigilant about locking things up at work, and we have bought these lock boxes that work out quite well. The other thing that I've done is I've had some lock boxes at home. Now, I'm not going to have those cleaners come through again, but anything at home that's sensitive information, I'm definitely going to lock it up and not assume that if it's hidden in some deep drawer that it's probably not going to get found in the future. So to wrap it up, the way my business structure now is put together is I own the business, 100% of both businesses. I also own the real estate that we're currently practicing out of. I have a legal entity for the business that is the practice of medicine. And there's two accounts. There's an incoming account, and now there's a checking account for outgoing payments. Then there's another business account that just deals with the real estate transaction. And yes, even though I own 100% of that, it's technically a totally separate business. So I have 3 different checking accounts. 2 are under the main business, 1 under the real estate. And the outgoing payment from the medical practice now pays rent to that checking account that owns the real estate of this, where there's not really any outgoing or transactions for that. The only transaction is paying the rent or paying me dividends from any money left over. So think about it. Hopefully you can avoid fraud like I unfortunately had. And yes, why do I have actually prescription pads? Is because sometimes I still have to write handicap placards, which require an actual physical prescription. I know it's annoying, but it is what it is. Hopefully you learned something today. If you own your own business or you're starting up a business, definitely create the incoming and outgoing checking accounts set up to make it seamless from the beginning. That way you don't have to go through the headache that I did of trying to pause payments and then vigilantly watch it for any fraud going forward. Hope you all have a good day. Subscribe, consider following along. See y'all next time.